Our first question will be 2.5 minutes long. It'll be answered by Mr. Porter first, Mr. Bell second, and it's a long one. The City Council, by a vote of only 3 of 6 seated members, has directed the City Manager to negotiate a contract for the sale of the bowling alley property to a group offering $500,000 and the promise of reopening the bowling alley. This price is approximately 25% of its value based upon a 2012 appraisal. Many believe the other proposals were better offers in terms of both price and proposed use. The final version of the deal will come before Council for approval after the election. Mr. Porter, you were quoted in the newsletter as not liking the proposal, but did not indicate you would work to obtain better terms or pursue other options. Mr. Bell, you were quoted in the same article as believing the Council was wrong in direct negotiations on the proposal. If elected, what leadership role will you take with respect to disposing of this taxpayer-owned asset on the terms accepted by the current Council? Again, Mr. Porter first, followed by Mr. Bell.
Well, the article in the newsletter, anytime you talk to the press, not everything makes it to the paper. So no disrespect to the paper, to the news media, but the bottom line is, I said earlier in some of our earlier debates that I was tired of selling city assets. My goal was to do long-term leases so that in the case of a failure, we wouldn't lose our asset. We would retain the asset. The problem is with this particular deal, I believe the city has gone forward and said they want the property to be a particular type of use. They're saying a bowling alley is what they want there. It's not necessarily driven by market or success. It's driven by what the City Council has asked a developer to provide. So when you do that, you end up possibly diminishing the highest and best use or the value for the property. So if the City Council, if the City of Homestead wants bowling in that location, it's going to be of less value. I personally don't know that bowling is going to be a success here. That should be driven by the market. At this particular point, I don't agree with the deal. If I get to be mayor, I'll be a part of what that decision is, and at this particular point, I don't support the value of that property I don't support it being sold, number one, and I certainly don't support the value of it.
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Well, I believe that the sale of that piece of property at what it is appraised for and what they are offering to sell it for, I think is an outrage. And one of the reasons for that is we've had I'm not against bowling alleys. I would love to have a bowling alley company come in here. Now, they've had a couple bowling alley companies come in here and make offers for that piece of property. And these are companies that run bowling alleys that gave us better terms than the ones that are in this contract right now. And they were turned down. All right. Now, they still wanted to be supplemented by the city to get the piece of property at a wonderful deal. All right. This deal that's went forward for $500,000, I think is a bad deal. The property is worth a lot more. Now, I know we're restricted by the piece of property has to be a bowling alley is the way it is with the council right now. I'm for looking at the best contract. If that's what the folks want to do, I personally don't think we should, but if that's what the folks want to do, at least let's take the best offer and give it to a company that actually runs bowling alleys. That's the only way I think it will be successful. All right, we've had bowling alleys there before, and they failed when they tried to do it on their own. Now, these other folks are coming in and saying, well, let us try it again, but we want the citizens of Homestead's taxpayers' money to be involved so that hopefully will be a success. The way the contract is written that I know of is there needs to be terms. You have to meet this deal, or the piece of property returns to the city. Not 5 years from now you ran it as a bowling alley and it didn't succeed and now you can do whatever you want with the piece of property. I think that would be a crying shame. And so, personally, I would love to see a bowling alley, but I would love to see a bowling alley where a bowling alley company comes in here, knows it will succeed, and they're willing to invest their money in it, instead of a bowling alley coming in here and saying, you guys invest your money, and if it's successful, wonderful. And if it's not, you lose, not them. I don't think that's the best way to do it.
Thank you. This next question will be for Mr. Porter only. Mr. Bell will have his later on. It's a two-part question. I'll ask it in two segments. Mr. Porter, during the first debate, you indicated that the staffing of the police department with additional officers would occur over time. You used the phrase that you don't eat an elephant whole, but one bite at a time, meaning that the expense of hiring additional officers is huge and should be accomplished in increments over many years. A campaign flyer promises to fully fund public safety. This statement seems to contradict your earlier position of a gradual build-up in the number of officers. What exactly is your plan for the police department?
Well, as I stated, there was twofold questions about the police department. Number one is the efficiency of the current structure and the morale of the current structure. I felt like we should take a look at first what we can make work better with what we have, meaning if we have morale issue, we need to address morale. Fully funding it, yes, we can fully fund it, but not at 25 officers. That's the number that's been thrown around. So it's not that we can't, they just funded 6, I understand 5. I don't know how many they just funded. But to say that we can go to full 25, I don't think we can. And 25 would be a very large leap. Am I answering your question?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Okay, so you said you had another part of the
Yeah,
question?
the second part is, while Homestead does not have a strong mayor form of government, you have promised to, quote, direct the Public Works Department to identify and solve traffic congestion issues. Isn't the power to directly instruct the department outside the purview of the power of the mayor? And aren't many of our main roads under the control of the county or state, and thereby not directly subject to fast action by the city?
Council does direct staff through the manager. If you took it differently, I apologize. I've said clearly from day one that this is not a strong mayor form, and it's a manager form of government. So if someone took it incorrectly, I apologize. But there is a lot of infrastructure that is pushed forward through the council and lobbying through the county and through the state, and we've been doing that for years. So it's a situation of support from the council, through the mayor's office, through the manager's staff. And again, I think we're wordsmithing here a little bit. I apologize for misrepresenting.
Okay, I want to read it. It says, Jeff Porter will direct the Public Works and Engineering Department staff to study and implement common sense solutions to reduce congestion on our city streets.
I guess common sense would be the key. Direct them to do common sense initiatives.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next question is a 2.5-minute question. We'll ask Mr. Bell to respond first, Mr. Porter second. In 2002, the city charter was amended to provide for term limits for both the mayor and council members. Of the 4,041 voters who voted, which was a 41% turnout, 78% supported term limits for council. To date, term limits have not precluded any office holder from running for another term. In 2015, Judy Waldman will not be able to run for council, as the term limit provisions will apply to her after 14 years as a member of council. Would you support any proposal to reduce, extend, waive, or eliminate term limits? Why or why not? Mr. Bell.
Well, no, I would leave it just the way it is, the way it's written in the charter. I think they studied it quite a bit, and I think they came up with a fair and balanced system. I am not for extending it for any one person for any reason. I also believe that the voters make the decision of how long somebody will be in office. If you get elected and they decide after 2 years you need to go, or 4 years, or 6, or 8, or 10, all the way up to the max, then that's their prerogative, and that's where they hold the power. That's how government works, and I am not about to change it. I don't think it should be changed, so I would leave it just as it is.
Mr. Porter?
Well, it was a duly processed, voted on by the public. I agree with term limits. Is it specific to a question with regards to Judy Wallman?
No, I think it's to the concept of term limits, accepting them, or of what the public has voted for, or to put it back on the ballot to change.
No, I think it's fine at the current state. I agree with term limits. I didn't always, but I do now.
Thank you. Now, the question for Mr. Bell only, and this is a three-parter, so it'll be 3 minutes. Mr. Bell, 2 recent campaign mail pieces supporting you, one issued through your campaign and the other through Good Government Now, proclaims you have experience and vision that counts, while the other expresses a statement that you will work to lower electrical rates by stopping the mismanagement of Homestead Electric. Please share with us your history and experience that will enable you to lead as mayor. Also, what specific instances of mismanagement can you cite in the electric utility, if eliminated, would lead to lower electrical rates? And then the third one we'll save. The first one deals with experience and vision, and the second one, mismanagement of Homestead Electric.
Well, I'm sure many of you have received some of my opponents' campaign flyers on me that I have no experience. But I think there's a lot more to experience than just sitting in the seat at the dais. Our city is a weak mayor form of government, and the man that needs the majority of the experience is to be the city manager. And that is personally my favorite form of government, because we could elect anybody. The public could elect anybody, inexperienced, experienced or not. But when it comes for the city manager, the whole council looks at it. We get their resumes and everything else, and we pick the best qualified person for that job. So, but as far as experience goes, I've lived in this city for 30 years, all right? I have a business here. All my children were born here. My 7 of my number 10 on the way grandchildren live here, all right? I've been involved in their school systems. I've been involved in politics for probably 20 years, a lot of it on the national level, and probably the last 10 years in the local government. And I know how our city runs. I know exactly what goes on inside of our city. I have the experience and the qualifications that we need for this city to be the mayor.
Would you address the mismanagement of Homestead Electric?
All right. As I've stated previously, mayor and council, my opponent included, have always had the power to raise or lower your rates. They've raised them to the point where the average citizen is paying 30% more than if he had the same rates as FP&L. A business is paying 50% more than if he had the same rates as FP&L. I have all the facts and figures that I right here. If anybody wants to see them, I'll be more than happy to show them how I come up with these figures. And we make a profit. This year we made $5 million off of our citizens. What did we do with that money? Instead of repairing the power plant, I believe our electrical workers should be upset with our current council and mayor and the previous ones, because every year we make $5 to $7 million off of our electric company. They're taxing us through our electric company. And instead of reusing that money to fix the electric company or to reduce our rates, they don't. They just keep charging us and charging us and charging us, and they use the money in general fund instead of doing things with that money that was generated by the electrical company to improve it.
Now, we need to add a minute here for the third question. This has been a long 3 questions. You have promised to take action to create jobs by attracting business. What are your specific ideas to accomplish this goal?
All right, I have a few.
1 minute.
Okay, I have a few. One of them is to attract businesses to our city. We need to have things that, a reason for the business to come here. One of them is our electrical rates. Would you want to come here if our electrical rates are going to be 50% for a business? Most of them will go 4 blocks over, go to Florida City where they have FP&L rates and lower their electric rates by 50%. We need to fix that. Partly right now is no new businesses come here. Well, I've addressed this before. Our infrastructure, we need to repair our sewage systems so that they can handle the additional sewage. We cannot do a brick and mortar building here. That must be addressed. The other things, when a business moves here, what do they look for? Quality of schools, quality of parks, quality of crime rate, that kind of thing. They all need to be improved, and I believe we can improve them. So there's a program called EB5. I don't know if some people are familiar with it, but with EB5, it's a national program that allows a foreign investor to come into our city with $500,000. They can invest in a company that's already here, or they can start their own. And they have to maintain that. Is my time up? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Should either the city manager or chief of police have concerns about job security in the event you are elected? Are there any former upper level staff members either of you would like to see back in the employ of the city?
Me first?
Mr. Porter first.
No. Both jobs are secure. I believe wholeheartedly in a manager. In most cases, that's probably the main reason why I got involved in this election in the first place, because I thought the previous mayor was attacking the manager for all the wrong reasons, because he was just doing his job. You know, I have no intentions, and certainly have no ability other than with the manager to effectively deal with the police department, other than through the manager. So it's my understanding they just gave the chief a 3-year contract, or at least an extension on his contract. So at this particular point, I believe he's safe as far as the manager is concerned. Certainly safe as far as I'm concerned.
Mr. Bell?
Have no intentions, never have, of getting rid of the city manager or the chief of police. I have a relationship with both of them, not an in-depth one, but I think they're both very fine men. I think they're both very experienced at what they do. I think they're both very qualified at what they do. And I have no problem with the jobs they're doing right now. And I don't see any reason to even look any further. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is a 2.5-minute question. We'll begin with Mr. Bell, followed by Mr. Porter. In the not-too-distant past, opposing candidates for both mayor and council were often friends and council colleagues who ran their campaigns based upon vision, merit, and accomplishment. While some level of bad blood between contenders is an unavoidable part of a campaign, it used to be that once the votes were counted, Homestead's leaders were able to set aside rivalries and work together for the good of the city. This included respect for those who may have supported a candidate who did not win. The mayor and council members were able to transition from campaigning to governing and leading. Since 2007, this has not seemed to be the case. Many longtime political observers view this campaign as the nastiest in memory. Both of you state that by this campaign, this current campaign, both of you state that Homestead needs to take a new direction and move beyond the divisiveness and acrimony of the last administration. What are your thoughts on the tone of this campaign, and how do you plan to move forward and genuinely work with and consider the reasonable viewpoints of all, including your opponent and his supporters? Mr. Bell, followed by Mr. Porter.
Well, I do think that sometimes campaigns can head south when folks attack personally. I think we should stick to the issues, stick to the facts at hand, and I have no problem working with anybody. They can disagree with me, they can agree with me. There's no problem with that. Everybody lived with my wife. In fact, our anniversary of 29 years was yesterday, and contrary to popular belief, we don't always agree. And it can happen the same between political opponents. It's when it, goes from beyond a vision or an idea that, personal feelings can get hurt. Things are said about people's spouses and that kind of, and it becomes personal, and it should never become personal. It should never be a personal thing. It should all be about ideas and visions for what a city should be, and those are what we should talk about, those are what we should discuss, and the rest should be tossed out.
If you would comment on the tone of the campaign and how you plan to move forward and generally work with others.
Well, I'm going to work with whoever's on council, and I have no problem with that. I believe to be in politics, you got to have pretty tough skin anyhow. I think it will preclude a lot of people from running because they see the vicious attacks that can come on them and the strains on their families and the things that can occur. And I think, unfortunately, it keeps a lot of good candidates out of politics. But me, it's like water off a duck's back. When I get in there, I will not have a problem working with anybody. I hold no animosities. I'm not a man that holds a grudge, and we will move forward for what's best for Homestead.
Mr. Porter?
You said since 2007?
Yes, the committee said since 2007.
That was the last year I was on council. So we were able to work through it until 2007. So the change happened in 2007. Unfortunately, in this campaign, I think there's just a tremendous amount of out-of-town money, and there's so much money involved, and the message is so narrow that it just has turned into not an issue-oriented campaign. It's digressed, and it's unfortunate that we're in that situation. But at the end of the day, we've been able to do it in the past, and we'll be able to do it again. But for me to have to go through this, or anybody to have to go through this, it's very vicious. And I hope that this will be our last one, where this amount of money is pumped into this community with just negative intent. So, can I work through it? Was that where you're going?
Yes.
Well, like I said, in the past, look at the 10 years that I served. We always were able to get through the election very quickly, because that's the year that I got off council. I don't have a problem. That's why there's a 90-day cooling off period. That's why their charter is very specific. Everybody get their feelings back in check, and let's go to work, but cool off first. And that's one of the things that I think we've been not doing in the recent past couple of elections, is cooling down prior to moving forward. And it's cost the city money. Elections are tough. They're just tough. This one's been extremely tough, not only for me, but for the community.
Thank you. The next question is a 2.5-minute question. Mr. Porter will answer first, followed by Mr. Bell. While each of you talk in terms of moving the city forward, are there any business dealings or other issues remaining from the Bateman administration that you believe merits investigation or independent review in order to reveal wrongdoing by vendors, elected officials, their spouses, or other third parties, or to recapture improperly paid public money? You want me to repeat that?
Are there any pending? I'm sorry, Bob.
I'll repeat it. While each of you talk in terms of moving the city forward, are there any business dealings or other issues remaining from the Bateman administration that you believe merit investigation or independent review in order to reveal wrongdoing by vendors, elected officials, their spouses, or other third parties, or to recapture improperly paid public money?
I personally don't know of any, but I do believe that the city manager is fully aware of everything that's been transpiring, because he was probably the driving force in digging some of the improprieties out. I would have to lean to the manager. He's been in the internal workings of the day-to-day dealings, If there's something that's been done improperly, yes, we need to flush it out. If there's some way to recoup something that we've been wronged over, yes. But specifically, Bob, I don't know of anything.
Mr. Bell?
Well, I think there's quite a few things that have been done that shouldn't have been done. Some of them have been laid to rest. I don't think we can revisit them, you know, and it's money we've lost. I think there are some deals that are still in the works. It's just like you guys know. I just said it with the bowling alley, and there's some deals that have possibly been done with land acquired by Dade Medical College for a pittance of what we paid for it. And I think the taxpayers need to get our money's worth when and if we sell property. I was recently informed that City of Homestead owns 153 pieces of property, all varying different sizes and, you know, value amounts and those kind of things. I don't think government should be in the landowning business. I think that those need to be sold back to the public, and that they now will become businesses or homes that will generate taxes, put them on the tax rolls. Right now we own them, so no taxes are paid on them. And I'm talking there's some pretty big parcels of land that could generate quite a few dollars for our city. If anything has been done, anything that was illegal or really a bad deal for us, if we can, I think we should readdress it. If it's laid to rest and we can't reopen those things, some lawsuits and things like that, then we just need to learn from the mistakes of previous administrations and not do it again.
Thank you. The next question is a 2.5-minute question. It's in 2 parts, and we'll ask Mr. Bell to answer first, followed by Mr. Porter. The campaign has been characterized on both sides by allegations against the opposing candidate, including voting history, inexperience, improper financial benefit, and ethical lapses, to name just a few. Each of you now have the opportunity to address any of the issues contained in mail pieces, robocalls, YouTube videos, or TV commercials by or on behalf of the other candidate against you. And then the second part, are there any mail pieces or other media distributed by you or by any other organization in support of you that you would like to correct, apologize for, or repudiate? So the first one is your opponent, and the second one is your own campaign.
Well, just recently, campaign worker that I hired works for me. There have been claims made that absentee ballot fraud was, or shenanigans with the absentee ballots, let me put it that way. Immediately became aware of this. I called my campaign worker in, asked him what was going on, and so because I will run only an ethical campaign, honest, straightforward, I asked him what was going on. He said there's absolutely no bearing to those charges, that he is innocent, and I said, well, but just to make everything look proper and everything else, he had agreed to step down from the campaign. He's not part of my campaign now, until this matter is cleared up. Unfortunately, my opponent has his folks at the election places saying that my campaign is involved in shenanigans and absentee ballot shenanigans and that thing, and I've taken the leadership, what needs to be done, and I nipped it right in the bud. Now my opponent has, maybe not necessarily him, but maybe some of the PACs or whatever that form him have just sent out a robocall and those kind of things, telling people on the phone that my campaign is involved in absentee ballots. Now this happened, I guess, a couple days ago. Now, I know for a fact that a man that works for him has been complained about to the investigators on the same thing, absentee ballot fraud. And he's been working for Mr. Porter for close to a month and a half since those complaints were made. And he's paid him up to $5,000, and he's still working for Mr. Porter at this time. This is the difference between me and my opponent. I took immediate action, let the man go. My opponent, his man that's been charged with similar things, is still working for him.
Okay, you haven't addressed your own campaign. The question having to do with your own campaign, are there any mail pieces or other media distributed by you or others you'd like to correct, apologize, or repudiate?
Not that I can think of. I believe that my campaign has put out nothing but facts. That's what I believe in. I don't consider putting out facts, previous votes, what you did when you were in office for 10 years to be dirty campaigning. My opponent, when he was in office, he was charged by the state of Florida, was charged by the ethics department, found guilty, had to pay his
Mr.
fine.
Bell, you're supposed to be addressing your campaign in this part of the question.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't believe any of my campaign literature that I have put out has been off the mark except to claim the facts.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Porter?
Thank you. I think from the perspective of the pieces that have been mailed out from me, we would put contrast pieces. The contrast is Mr. Bateman was arrested. Mr. Bell has no experience. I have experience. If that's negative campaigning, I don't see it. The issue is regards as to what I think was in what I would consider slanderous towards me is a mail piece that's been circulated 15 or 20 times that quotes a blog as a credible, newsworthy source of information. A blog, anybody can write a blog tonight and post it tomorrow, and if you consider that newsworthy, we're in a slippery slope to nowhere. So I think that from my perspective, we've just put the facts out. I have no idea about any investigation. I'm not aware of anything that he's talking about as far as an investigation into voter issues. Has nothing to do with me. So I don't know why I get drawn into it, but that's beside the point. Did I answer the questions?
I think you did. There's no mail piece or media that you would want to correct, apologize, or repudiate?
No, I like I said, I think that we can put contrast pieces out that lays out the groundwork between the differences in the two candidates.
Thank you. There has been a moratorium on the enforcement of the sign ordinances for the past 2 years, and it seems that in the commercial areas west of US 1 in particular, there's been a proliferation of commercial signs which would not be permitted if enforcement were being conducted. What priority does aggressive code enforcement and the aesthetics of our community have on your agenda? Mr. Porter, followed by Mr. Bell.
And specific to the sign ordinance, I guess is what you're talking about
The
first.
signs and, I guess, general code enforcement.
Well, I'd just like for us to kind of revisit the sign ordinance. I think that when we have some of the big box retailers that are coming in adjacent to the turnpike, I think our sign ordinance needs to be expanded a little bit to give us some flexibility in those areas. And code enforcement, I think it has to go back with interference from the council as to not letting code enforcement do its job. I believe that my feeling is that Mr. Bateman tried to encourage code enforcement to look the other way so that the business community could get maybe get away with something that they shouldn't have. I mean, if the law is the law, let's enforce the law. If we don't like the law, let's change it.
Mr. Bell?
Well, I believe in both things. I believe we need to have aesthetics in our city, and we need to not just let folks run rampant and put up any kind of sign anywhere they want at any time. But I also know that in code enforcement, if you have a bad law, you know how to get it replaced, enforce it. And you will get an uproar from the folks. If you have a bad sign law, you enforce it across the board, no leeway one way or the other, and I guarantee the businesses, if they do not like it, will be in here saying, we do not like that. So I think as far as the aesthetics in some areas of our town, I think we should have more professional looking signs, which would have to come into, you know, maybe rewriting the codes in some of these areas, in the commercial areas, as far as how big a sign can be. Can it be neon? Can it not be neon? Those kind of things. But I also know as a business owner here that uses signs at his business to advertise my business, I also know that it's a needed thing to be able to attract businesses to yourself. So I have no problem with signs. I do have a problem with, which is where our code enforcement comes in, is to the size, how you're allowed to use them, and that kind of thing. So if we need to change codes in the commercial area in some instances to make it easier for signage or to make it more restrictive for signage, I'm always up for whatever we need.
Okay, thank you. We've reached the last question before the final statements. 2.5 minutes. We'll begin with Mr. Bell, followed by Mr. Porter. Each of you will now have the opportunity to ask the other a question. And the 2.5 minutes is for the answer.
So I'm asking.
Yes. You may ask your opponent a question.
Okay. I'm going to go back to the absentee ballot. And the question I want to ask my opponent is, his campaign has put out materials on me saying that we have absentee voter ballot shenanigans going on in my campaign. I took decisive action. Leadership immediately nipped it in the bud. The man no longer works for my campaign. I would like to ask my opponent why his guy that was brought up, same charges, a month and a half ago, still works for his campaign.
Mr. Porter.
Who was brought up on charges a month ago?
Would you supply the name, please?
Mr. Timothy Milton, who works for him, has probably been paid close to almost $5,000 by Mr. Porter's campaign.
Okay, Mr. Porter.
I don't know what he's talking about, brought up on charges. Mr. Milton works for me just like other people work for me when it comes to going and getting out the vote. So I don't know what he's talking about as far as charges are concerned. We don't chase absentee ballots. We go to people's homes, knock on doors, and ask them to get out and vote. I don't know what the issue is.
Okay. It's your opportunity now to ask Mr. Bell a question.
And I know all I need to know.
Okay, it's time. Oh, please. I had asked you earlier not to applaud until after the closing statements. Closing statements will be 2.5 minutes. And Mr. Bell will lead off, followed by Mr. Porter.
Well, I would like to thank the Rotary, our moderator, Mr. Bob Jensen, and Mr. Losser for allowing us this opportunity to speak to the community. I hope you guys can see the difference in our campaigns. I believe that I've always stated the truth. I've always been honest and forthright, and I will continue to be. I think that most of the mailers you've seen come from me. In fact, every one of them has only stated facts about my opponent's previous 10 years as councilman and vice mayor. I believe it's time that we get our city back on track. I do not want to return to when the 10 years that he was in office brought us to the brink of bankruptcy and the governor almost took receivership of our city. Then they bring in folks to help straighten it out. An auditor was brought in when they didn't like the way the facts and figures were coming out. Mr. Porter voted to fire the auditor. And this is not what we need to return to. We need to have open, honest, and ethical government. We need to be open with you folks and what's going on. Just like I said, we need leadership. We need honest leadership, and that's what I believe I will bring. I hope you all will remember me on in early voting and on November 5th. And punch number 31, Mark Bell for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Porter.
Well, thank you guys for putting this on. It's always a pleasure to come up here and get hammered by you, Bob. Appreciate it. There's a clear difference in the candidates. It's night and day. It's up to you as the public to decide. Accusations about me individually bringing the city to the brink of disaster are ludicrous. It took many, many years to get there. Look at the 10 years afterwards when we built the hospital, when we built Lowe's, when we built BJ's, when we built the hotels. Those things they just didn't happen because nobody was doing anything. So you can't point at the bad. At least we addressed the problem and fixed the problem. So there's no reason to badger anyone. You just have a clear choice. So I'm here. I can only offer my services. I think I've gotten the proven leadership. You look at the past. You can choose to look at the few things that may have not gone correctly, but you got to look at all the other things that did, and look at what we've got today because of the service that some of the people in this room were there for. And I just ask for your support. I really ask for your prayers because this is a tough one. It's really been a tough one, and I hope that it doesn't discourage people in the future from getting involved, because there needs to be good leadership. Get in line and start assuming some of this position to lead this community forward. So ask for your support, ask for your prayers. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Steve. Rotary Club, news leader, Dale, thank you. Appreciate it. Good night.
Thank you, gentlemen.